workshop, online workshop, we're going to have a beautiful and huge team like with us. So I'm going to pass the word to Frank to introduce himself for us.
Hello, good evening, good morning, wherever you're calling from. Thank you, Valentina. My name is Frank Weisenberger. I am convening the Community of Practice Indigenous Conservation Standard Projects, which is part of the Conservation Coaches Network. And on my coordinating committee is, amongst others, as well, Valentina. And with Valentina together and our dear friend Stuart, we're facilitating this project. And with that, I would like to hand over to Stuart.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's morning for me. It's great to be here. And as Frank said, I'm working with Frank and the coordinator, the Community of Practice and TNC to support this project. Looking forward to today and extracting some ideas from you all. Valentina, back to you.
I'm going to pass the word also to Cristina.
Hola, hello everyone. Cristina Lash in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico. And I work with the Nature Conservancy, and also I help coordinate CCNet globally. And as Frank and Valentina and Stuart mentioned, the community of practice that is leading this work together with conservation management and TNC is part of CCNet. So it's a pleasure to be here and learn with all of you.
Thank you, Cristina. Sebas.
Vale, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see you today. And thank you for making the time to contribute in this interesting project for building guidance to support Indigenous leadership and self-determination in conservation planning and adaptive management. As a technical reminder, maybe before we start, we plan to have a simultaneous translation for this call. There is some technical issues with this, but we should be able to fix it. So we will have the simultaneous translation option hopefully available in a couple of minutes in the call. My name is Sebastián Cabrera. I work in the global team of conservation in partnership with Indigenous people and local communities of TNC. And we're working together with the CCNet Indigenous Conservation Standards Community of Practice and Conservation Management to try to build up this guidance that is intended to support conservation practitioners, here and by this, NGOs, people from communities, and also like any practitioner that is engaging on conservation projects that have to do with Indigenous peoples or their territories and their resources, to develop guidance that supports more inclusive and respectful approaches for doing conservation, and also processes that support the leadership and actual self-determination in conservation planning. So by this, promoting right relationships and ensuring that the conservation plans that are being created are integrating effectively the voices, perspectives, and choices of Indigenous peoples and local communities. So thank you all for making time to be here and share ideas and experiences, and we're happy to have you here. So back to you, Vale.
Thank you, Sebas. So we have just a couple of minutes to finish the introduction of this huge team. So I'm going to let the space also to Brandy and Parkes to introduce themselves, that they are part of this effort.
Thanks, Valentina. I just will be brief and say hello. My name is Brandy Ferris. I also work with TNC. I'm currently residing in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I work closely with Sebastian and Christina from the TNC side, now in partnership with the Community of Practice, CCNet, and Conservation Measures Partnership to produce these tools and resources for more Indigenous and community-led conservation. Thank you everyone for being here and for offering your perspectives and insights.
Thank you, Brandy. Parker, up to you.
Hello, everybody. Good to be with you all today. My name is Parker Raup. I'm Program Manager for TNC's Global Program on Indigenous and Community-Led Conservation. I really appreciate everybody's time and sharing this space with you all. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tim. So it's my turn. Hello everyone. Hola a todos y todas. Bienvenidas y bienvenidos. I'm super happy to be here. I'm Valentina Barón. I'm based in Colombia. As Frank said, I'm part of the steering committee of the Indigenous project, the community, the learning community. I mean, it's changing the languages. The community of practice of Indigenous projects in CCNet Latin America. I'm representing Latin America with a colleague that names Gustavo, and we are part of a huge effort all across the world to make this webinar and this project happening and succeed. So thank you so much, everyone, to be part of this. Just to let you know that as you introduce yourself during all the chat, you are part of this process. So this is an inclusive effort that we are making. We hope to have also in Spanish, but no, don't be scared that during the breakout rooms, we're going to speak in Spanish, and in other breakout room, we're going to speak in English. So everyone feels really comfortable to share our insights and experiences in each of the languages who identifies themselves. So thank you so much to be here. And I'm going to let Stuart to make a little brief about the context, and then we're going to go to work together.
Thanks, Valentina.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you share my screen?
Not yet.
I'm just waiting for it to
Starting.
come through. Not seeing anything yet. Is anyone getting it screen? I've just got grey. Hey, there we go.
Are you sharing the Spanish one? No, the English one.
Yeah, that's the Spanish one. Yep. Okay.
There you go.
Alrighty. Thank you. If you could go to the next one, Valentina, that'd be good. Thanks. And again. Thanks. So this work has come about. There are several aspects to the work, but basically there's, as we know, and as there should be, and as is appropriate, there's more and more guidance around working with Indigenous people and local communities, and in many different contexts. But there's kind of not so much supporting guidance to provide to practitioners, and in this case, in people who are using the conservation standards, as to how, yes, this is how we effectively work with people and partner and engage and so on, but how can we work with the tools that we have so that they are equitable and accessible and usable in our projects and in our adaptive management projects. So how do we take something like the conservation standards and appropriately adapt that to the different circumstances? So this project is looking at things like principles for working with First Nations or Indigenous people and local communities, some specific tools, but also how do we support adaptation? We've got some weird thing over my screen there, Valentina. I think you've right-clicked on something. There we go. Good. That's everyone else can see it more properly then. So as you've heard from all the introductions, this is a sort of three-legged stool project between the Nature Conservancy and the community of practice and conservation management to try and develop some tools and some supporting materials. And in this particular case, and today, what we're trying to think about is how or what sort of guidance can we provide to practitioners to help them think about how they not just use tools, but adapt tools effectively to work with First Nations. So to give an example of what we're getting at with that. So next slide, thanks, Valentina. So I'm going to talk a bit about the Healthy Country conversation in Australia, but I'll do that fairly quickly because Valentina might just go back to you to talk a bit as well about your experience with this. So my why I'm here is I've had a lot to do with what some of you would know as healthy country planning. So where that came from, what does that mean? In the very early days of conservation standards, it was called conservation action planning. It evolved through to conservation standards, or the open standards. In the late 2000s or mid to late 2000s, we were approached to work with some First Nations in Australia to help develop some community-based conservation plans. And that was Frank and myself. And as part of that process, we said, well, let's use the conservation standards. They're a good tool and they work well for exactly this purpose. There was a long conversation with the community and everybody agreed to go ahead using that. But as we started using it, it was fairly clear that, while the broad concepts and the core structure was effective and useful, there were many ways in which it didn't quite capture what was needed to really reflect the community's perspectives on what was valuable, what was threatening, what the sort of strategies were, and so on. And so as we went through a whole bunch of different conversations and processes and so on, we made small changes, but adapted the conservation standards. And so at the end of the process, we ended up with a thing called healthy country planning. Still conservation standards, but different and more effective in that context. It went through several further iterations, but it's basically become what is healthy country planning. Now it's then rolled out and worked quite well in Australia, and lots of people use it. Then other folks have looked at it as well, but we found that you can't just sort of pick it up just because it's an adaptation in a particular context with Indigenous peoples. Doesn't mean you can just pick that up and drop that into another place with Indigenous peoples. Local requirements and local needs are different. The way people see the world is different. And just because it's one First Nations here doesn't mean it's going to be with one First Nations there. So we want to try and boil down, how do you kind of not replicate healthy country planning, rather how do you replicate the process of maintaining the strength of the conservation standards, but creating something that will work effectively in a local place, because more and more of us are doing that in more and more places, and we can't come up with 50 different versions of the conservation standard that are going to work in every case. What we need to do is provide guidance to people to be able to do that. Can you go to the next one, Valentina? So health country planning is not the only game in town. Valentina will talk in a minute about her work. There's the adaptations of work that's been done in Hawaii. There's work happening in Canada and so on. So there's other projects also. The changes we made were significant but not dramatic. So the key places that we fiddled were in viability assessment, in thinking about different values or targets. And you need to remember this is 17 years ago. So at that stage, conservation standards was very biophysically focused. It's moved a lot since then, but the introduction of things like socioeconomic values or socio-cultural values was really quite different. And just changed the words so that people actually understood what the process was about, which might sound like a strange thing to think was important to do, but anyway, it turned out it was. So that was in terms of the standard. So they're fairly small changes, but because they're in some of the really core early decision-making parts of the process, they really shift how the outcomes happen. And then adaptations to the process were things like, shifting out of meeting in buildings and actually meeting in the places where people were. Again, it doesn't sound particularly radical, but it was a different approach to how a lot of conservation planning was done in Australia with First Nations. Dealing with language, of course, and trying to really respect a lot of, again, sounds weird to say that this was new, but it kind of was. Just respecting the way communities operate and make decisions. Different parts of the world have different rules around who can be in a room together and things like that, and just respecting those and working with those. So not huge changes, but it's about understanding, well, which things can we change and should we change, and which things can and should we keep, and how do we do that in a way that as practitioners we can be confident that the process is still strong and meets the core needs of conservation standards, and that the community can be confident that what they have is something that reflects them. Valentina, would you like to talk about your experience as well?
Thank you so much, Stuart. Yes, just briefly, I want to share with you and highlight also the experience that Australia made. So Australia made an adaptation of the conservation standards, and here in Colombia and Ecuador replicated some things and adapted it, resulting in, for example, many of the territorial management plan of 10 different indigenous people, like communities and territories. And also it was like a really long path that had continued until now. It began into 2020, 2011. And that resulted in rescue all these tools that the community has, and also put it into this document that helps to manage the territory. And also we rescue and learn from the experience of Australia to highlight the how they manage their territory, also to using more inclusive methodologies, as for example, including gender, including intergenerational focus, and also trying to make different languages, like local languages, dialects, in a same room. So that generates a lot of efforts, and that represents beautiful resources as all the pathway that the women on their leaderships and communities with their own conservation projects are resulting right now in the Amazon basin. For example, they are starting also to exchange their learnings and all the experiences to work all together to defend also resources and ecology. We made a spiritual dimension that really highlight here in Ecuador and Colombia. We have many experiences that we wanted to share to you, so we have another spaces to talk about. But for example, in Colombia, we made different adaptations for the Antioquia, that is one part of the of oops on the on Colombia and also the Amazon. So we are scaling to different parts of the Latin American also. So I'm going to continue. We wanted just to share some experiences from these adaptations, and we go ahead with instructions. We have some problems here. Yeah, much better. Can you see the screen again? Perfect. So,
Yep.
talking about these adaptations, we wanted to highlight also and listen your experiences as we already made it in Australia and Latin America with you. So there is the part of explain and give of the instruction of the breakout sessions. So Stuart, you can also go ahead to explain out so quickly briefly this part.
Yeah, sure. Me to talk through this? Yeah, happy to. So we are going to break into two groups now. So that says Frank and Stuart. It's going to be English and Spanish, hence my random typing in the chat there just a moment ago. So we're going to break into two groups. Please go where you feel most comfortable. So one group will continue to run in English. The other group, and Frank and I will be there facilitating that. And Valentina and Christina will facilitate the other group in Spanish, and I'll put the links in the chat in a moment. Pretty standard breakout session. We're in a Miro board. You can click on the link and go to the Miro board. We'll share our screens as well so you can see what's going on. We'll talk a bit more about it once we get into the Miro boards. But basically, we're just going to ask your responses to 5 different topics and think about, what needs do you have? Where do you struggle in terms of adapting conservation standards? Where do you need more guidance in terms of adapting conservation standards? What format is guidance helpful? How do you best work with what types of delivery mechanisms? What sort of inputs are needed to support yourself and communities in doing adaptation? And do you have any examples of guidance that we need to be aware of, within the conservation standards or conservation community, but also more broadly? It's always good to horizon scan and see what other people are up to. We'll do that for about 30 minutes, come back, quick report back, and then off we go.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's it, Valentina. I'll pop the links in the chat.
Perfect. And Frank is going to send us to the mirror board, the breakout rooms and the mirror boards. So please choose the breakout room that you feel better with the language, and we can continue working together. We came back in 30 minutes. Sebas?
Which one, Frank, which language is which, right?
Hi,
Trying.
this is Diego. This is Diego Leon from the bilingual operation team.
I'm
We're
I'm
going
trying to
the
set them
breakout
up.
room, so
Just determine, just make one room, one language, Valentina. With the interpreters, it's not working at the moment.
yeah, agree. So see you in 30 minutes.
So room 1 is Spanish, room 2 is English.
Hola, Valentina.
Hola, hola. ¿Ya lograste entrar?
Sí, pero creo que estoy con tu nombre también, Sebastián.
No
Les
te
compartí también
preocupes.
el correo con el que ha entrado Karen, pero si necesitan ayuda para asignarlos, los puedo guiar desde aquí mientras están en breakout rooms, porque la interpretación no funciona en breakout rooms.
Sí. Solo déjame ver una cosa. Stuart or Frank, who's on the English group right now facilitating?
No one there. Frank, can you send me to breakout room 1? I think everyone, Christina was in 2. Oh, there we go. I can
Christine
see.
is in Spanish. If somebody could go to the English one.
I'm going to the English one now.
Thank you. Check. Okay, so Stuart's already gone to the English one. That's good news. Frank, are you with us?
I'm still here. I'm just trying to deal with those interpreters.
Okay, so Karen, could you just give Frank like the step-by-step instructions to do the setting?
No, the thing is, the interpreter is already set up. This email has been set up originally. I think we just have to scrap it, to be honest. I think there's something wrong on their end.
Frank, let me help you with that. If you choose the interpretation feature, you can edit this part and you can select participants in the meeting right now. You can just type Karen Galeano and assign it directly.
Okay, could you just drive us step by step to so Frank can find this on his screen?
Okay, can you well this setting is can show us by sharing screen, but if Frank can access to the interpretation feature to edit or
Yes,
manage the interpretation, okay, you
and
can select a manage interpretation.
this is already set up. The email address is set up as an interpreter. I do not know why you cannot access it. Like I have twice
Yeah.
RSI 012 and RSI 002 set up as the interpreters at the moment. So I
Oh, that's
can,
why.
Could you share your
That
screen, Frank, so they can see and they could guide us?
Yes, this is a problem with webinar, in fact, because you have to send every invitation from each user. That's why I was told that by email. Um, you can, as I said previously, you can edit this part and select Karen from this meeting right now.
so you should be able to see my screen, and there is under
Oh, okay. I
interpreters.
mean, you are on the Zoom application for desktop.
Yeah, and how do I?
Okay,
Like,
you can edit in the Zoom application in this meeting right now, and in the Zoom app in the desktop. Sorry.
yeah, I can see, but the problem is that the email address that is set up has not. It shows me here as it has not joined yet. Interpreter 1, the interpreter that is set up.
Let me check. Let me check that.
Sebastian, I'm not sure if it still makes sense. Like we're now at the end of the webinar. I don't think
Yeah,
there's.
maybe just like if there's any, you're totally right. Maybe we don't need it anymore. But yeah. So On the Zoom screen, there's no chance just like to add it as we usually do it, like assigning the facilitator from the
It
screen, not from the desktop.
yeah, but the problem is I can do it again, English to Spanish. It just tells me here it has not joined, that the person jumps in and out continuously. So as soon as I
Yeah.
add this person drops off again, who's called Karen Galano, interpreter, was now 3 times in the waiting room and comes in and out, and every time the person
Okay.
leaves, it
Don't
drops
worry, Frank.
out as an interpreter.
I think since we're already in the final part of the call and that we're focusing on the discussions in the groups, let's just leave it like that. We can go to support the breakout groups right now, and Karen and bilingual team, maybe we can share after the call some like feedback of how to improve this on better. I know it's in our side too, so just to understand, so we don't have this again. And thank you back again for your support and your prompt answer too.
Okay, Sebastian. See you later.
Gracias, muy amables. Okay, Frank, I will join the Spanish group, and thank you again.
No problem.
I don't have any more the options. Could you send me to the Spanish group? I don't see the options to join the.
Let me find you unassigned. If you click on the 3 dots at the bottom, that says more, you
Okay.
should see the breakout rooms if it doesn't show up.
Cool. And room 1, what's English or Spanish?
Room 1 is Spanish, room 2 is English.
Okay. I'll go to the Spanish. See you, Frank. Thanks.
Oh no, sorry, Sebastian. Room 1, Stuart is in room 1, so room 2 is Spanish now, apparently.
Okay, I will go to the English ones because there's less people. See ya.
Catches me every time. Suddenly having a lovely chat and then
Starting by force, back again. Thank you very much for your inputs during the breakout groups. Vale, and Frank, I will leave the word to you for the closing part of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sebas. So we're going to give just a really couple minutes, so short, to listen the feedback of the English group and Spanish group. So we had a volunteer here from the Spanish, so I can let Daniela Lizano, to give us.
Yeah, I'll try to run. Like for the first group that is like the needs, we think that the major obstacles to support like efficiently, it's mainly the conceptual framework and methodological framework. Not all the time it's it allows a dialogue, an equity-driven dialogue with communities, that it's like aligned with like local practices and saberes. So it's more like a methodological approximation that requires a terminology like recalibration or something like that. And for the use of the guide, it's mainly as a tool and as a tool that it's didactical and that it's comprehensible. And for the format, it is more like a case study driven and practical cases driven. That will be better. And for the inputs that are required for planning, like the free prior consent and informed consent, like a learning agenda that is based on communities and indigenous people's priorities, safeguards, and with a participatory diagnostic, and cultural pertinence driven design for accountability and building trust. To have a tool for evaluating risk and safeguards mainly. Those are the inputs that were highlighted by our group. And yeah, to be very fast, that's a quick summary of what we put there.
Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Dani.
Thank you, Dani.
Yeah, thank you, Spanish team. So who is the volunteer of the English one?
we didn't even talk about that. I didn't even give them the option. So I'll just jump in because I know time's short. We could spend the next 10 minutes. We should have spent most of our meeting arguing about that. But I'll just touch on a couple of key things in each one that sort of I thought resonated. So in terms of needs, just a bit of that sort of general guidance about when to adapt, when to make these sorts of decisions, and to try and sort of figure out how to actually make this all work. In terms of uses, or how would you use, what sort of uses do people, how would they want to see this guidance come in? A lot of focus on sort of coaching and so on, and guidance for all stages and as early as possible. In terms of formats, the overall theme that I picked up was kind of the key for, it's obviously templates, checklists, stuff like that, but really access to coaches, access to people or persons through some sort of method. We talked about the potential value of things like reels and so on. It's like, rapid, tight little videos and things like that. The sorts of inputs, pretty much the sort of two sort of scarcest and hardest resources to come by, being time and trust, are the critical inputs. There's a bunch of other thoughts around that, but they were the ones that kind of really came out to me. And in terms of examples, a few that people have shared life plans and territory planning and things like that. And also, the work that the Liderada is doing with their legacy planning is worth having a look at as well. And thanks to the team, it was good conversation.